cannot believe this is happening again. I thought therapy was supposed to help our kids, not hurt them. Hey there, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Katie. I'm a foster adoptive mom to 3 awesome kids, ages 6, 10, and 14 currently. Our youngest has been with us for 5 years, and our older 2 kids have been with us for about 4. And I work as an adoption consultant to help families like yours who are hoping to adopt waiting children from foster care. These are kids whose parental rights have already been terminated, and they're just sitting in the foster system waiting to find an adoptive match and an adoptive family. I offer consultations for families who are looking to find an agency, understand the process, and just have help along the journey because it can be really confusing. So definitely click on the link in the description box below if you would like to set up a call with me, have all your questions answered, and feel like you have a little more clarity on this journey. Okay, so I have a bone to pick today, and something happened recently with our kids, and I just need to vent about it to people who get it, who are in this world of adoption and foster care, and know how big of an impact this has. So here's the thing, as an adoptive mom, and just as a human in general, I'm a big fan of therapy. It can help so much. My kids have done therapy. I have done some therapy. My husband has even done some therapy. We're fans of it around here. It can be so helpful to work through difficult things we've been through, to work through situations we're currently in. And therapy is supposed to help us cope with our trauma, not cause it, right? Well, in this case, we're wrong. We have had some really frustrating situations with therapists over the years with our kids, and recently another thing happened and I'm just so fed up, I need to talk about it. So my first gripe, and this is not what recently happened, but my first gripe is that it is so hard to find therapists who will accept our kids' insurance. So because our kids were adopted from foster care, they have Medicaid. And this is very common for any children who are adopted from foster care to have Medicaid up until the age of 18 provided by the state. This is wonderful. This is a great benefit to give to these kids and a way to help out the families who adopt them. Just take some of that financial burden of having insurance for your entire family. However, we've run into this with doctors, therapists, you name it, dentists. There are so few providers who will accept this insurance. And it's interesting because the therapist I worked with, I brought it up to him and he said, unfortunately, there's kind of a stigma with Medicaid that they think maybe people won't show up or that, they just don't know what kind of clientele they're getting. And that upset me so much because when our kids were in foster care living in our home, we didn't have the option at all of adding them onto our health insurance. They had to only be on their Medicaid. And so if I wanted to get them a doctor's appointment, I'm not kidding you, I'd have to call 15 places. And I would call and I would say, hi, are you accepting new patients? And they would say, yes, we are. And they'd say, what insurance do you have? And then I would tell them and they would say, oh, we're actually not accepting any more patients with that insurance, which was so frustrating to me as an adoptive parent, a foster parent, to be like, these kids, this is the only insurance they can have. It's no fault of their own that they're in this situation where that's the only insurance they can have. And you are telling me you will not work with them even though you're accepting new patients. Like, don't get me started. Therapists were the same way. Very few therapists will accept their insurance. And if they do accept their insurance, they don't have availability, probably because everyone with that insurance is flocking to them. And yes, there's always private pay as an option, but private pay therapy can be very expensive, especially if your child needs to go every week. That adds up very quickly. And when you find a therapist too, this is something that I've always found difficult, is when I'm establishing my child or myself with a therapist, it takes a long time to get in. Often for a first appointment, you have to fill out a ton of paperwork, a ton of information every single time you go to a new therapist, and then you start and it's like, okay, we're in it now. But it takes a lot of effort to find a therapist, to get established. And then another frustration I've found is that oftentimes, I don't know why this is, but they won't offer consistent slots each week. So with a couple of the therapists we've been to with our kids, there were no set times. Like, it wasn't like you come every Tuesday at 3 p.m. It was like, this week you can schedule one. Oh, these are what we have available. Oh, this next week it's a totally different time. You have to pull your kid out of school to bring them because this other time isn't available. And I was just like, wouldn't it be easier for all of us if there was an established time? Because for me as a parent, it was so hard to keep up with having to call every single week, make a new appointment, make sure we got our time slot in. And if we didn't call with the right amount of time, then there wouldn't be any slots available. It was honestly a nightmare. And I was shocked to see that that's how multiple practices worked. Again, I'm not a therapist. I do have a sister who's a school counselor and went through some of that program, but I just don't understand that. And when I brought it up to my therapist, he was like, yeah, that's kind of strange. I do think that's been happening a lot because of the demand, but he was like, it's not really the best practice. And I agree. And the other problem is therapists are really hit or miss. So you could get your kid established with a therapist and then realize that that therapist's personality doesn't mesh well with your child, or they don't feel comfortable talking to them. There are all sorts of things. Our daughter had this one therapist who was so crotchety and rude. I honestly dreaded when we'd have therapy with her. It was on the computer. It was like a video conference thing. And I never wanted to be in on the sessions because she wanted at least one parent in on them. She was just mean. I was stressed out being there. And I was like, is my daughter able to actually process things with her if she's this rude? Anyway, basically what I'm saying is getting established with a therapist at all, getting a consistent appointment, all of those things are so hard already, especially for foster and adoptive families. And while all those things are annoying and frustrating, nothing is as frustrating as what now 3 different therapists have done to my kids. So I want to set the stage here. My kids, and any kids who have been in foster care or adopted from foster care, they have experienced loss and trauma. And for a lot of these kids, they have a large fear of abandonment. They're very afraid that someone's going to give up on them, they're going to leave them. And think about it, from the time that they first entered foster care, they were taken away from their parents, and in their minds, oftentimes, it's like their parent abandoned them. Sometimes parents actually do abandon the children, and that is why. But there's that sense of abandonment in almost every foster care and adoption situation. And then sometimes these kids enter into foster care and move from home to home to home, creating another sense of abandonment. None of these families stuck with me, none of these families were willing to put up with me and put up with my behaviors. And is there something wrong with me? What's the problem? Why does everyone leave me? Why does everyone push me out and not want me there? Those feelings and thoughts run deep within our kids who are adopted from foster care or who are in foster care currently. And it makes sense. They've had so many situations that have made them feel like there's something wrong with them, that maybe they have bad luck following them everywhere they go, and they're never going to have anyone secure or stable. And even with us being an adoptive placement home for our kids, it took them a long time to fully trust that we weren't going anywhere. And I still deal with some clear abandonment issues within my kids that I notice, just behaviors or a response to me grabbing my keys to head out the door. There's a lot of fear and panic, don't leave me. And that can still happen now, even with everything we've done to try and help our kids. So as you can imagine, we are very careful about not making our kids feel like we're abandoning them. We always tell them if we're going to go somewhere. We always explain when we'll be back. We call them if we're gone. There's all these steps that we go through to kind of ease that sense of abandonment and give them a sense of security. But oh man, the therapists who should be helping with the abandonment issues seem to be causing them, because we have now had 3 therapists leave unannounced and unexpectedly with no warning to our kids. And it has happened every time right after our kids have gotten established with them. And I cannot tell you how mad it makes me. So the first time was when our kids were very new to living with us. They'd just gotten started with a counselor. I think they had been seeing her for maybe a month. And I was really encouraged because my daughter, my oldest, was like, I actually feel really comfortable with her. She's younger and I feel like I can talk to her about things. And I was like, oh, good, this is great. And my son was doing play therapy and he was enjoying it. and he was connecting a little bit there. And then one day they had an appointment. My daughter had an appointment. And at the end, she goes, "Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to be your therapist anymore because I got a promotion. So I'm going to be working in a different department now." And it was just like no warning until that exact moment. It was like, what? It sounds like maybe you knew this was a possibility. I know things happen, but like, is there no way you could transition more slowly out of this? And my daughter probably just spent this session opening up to you and bearing her heart to you and her feelings, and now you're abandoning her too. And I know it might sound like a tad dramatic, but the truth is that was a time when things were very volatile for my daughter in general because everything was new. So I was so upset when that happened, but I thought, okay, it's probably just a fluke, like it happens, I was willing to overlook it even though it was frustrating to me. So then we're looking for therapists, can't find anyone because it's like, 2020, like everyone needs therapy because we're all traumatized from what's been going on in the world. So it's really hard to find someone. We ended up finding someone, this is the crotchety old lady one, it was like our only option. And it was via Zoom that they met. And, my daughter started working with her. They focused a lot on like ADHD stuff. And so they wanted the parents in on the conversation to help with that. Again, I mentioned I did not enjoy being on those conversations because she was extremely rude. In general, she just had a rude personality, which is so funny because the lady who scheduled it actually warned me that her personality can be a little bit abrasive. And I was like, a therapist is abrasive? But she was the only option they had. Wonder why. And so I was like, well, we need something. We need to get her in here so she can talk through some stuff. And so they started doing therapy again, probably met for about a month. And then at the end of a session one day, the therapist goes, "Oh, and by the way, I'm retiring. So this is the last time you're going to meet with me." And didn't give any sort of option of like, now you could start meeting with this person or anything like that. No warning, just bam. "Okay, by the way, this is the last time I'm ever going to see you." I was so frustrated already because that woman was very abrasive and not the kindest therapist. Not the kind of therapist I would want to have personally. I mean, it was one of those things where I didn't really like her, so losing her wasn't that bad. But for my daughter, having to go through that all over again, she just reopened up to a new therapist after her other one ditched her. And now this lady is retiring and like she's out. And I'm thinking retirement usually takes planning. Usually, if you are going to retire. You don't just wake up one day and go, "I'm retiring tomorrow." So this lady clearly had the opportunity to tell us, to let us know. I think it was irresponsible of her to take on new patients. Personally, like I really do. I think it was irresponsible for her to take on patients, especially kids that she knew had trauma from abandonment, from being in foster care. Like, how awful is this? And I know I've shared about this before on my channel because I had a couple of you in the comments who are therapists and you guys were like, "I am so sorry. That's really bad practice. That shouldn't have happened," which I really appreciate you because I want to be clear that I don't think all therapists are bad. I had a great therapist. I know many great therapists. There are great ones out there, but this is a problem we keep seeing. So then we took like a year or so off, maybe even more. We took a year or so off therapy because it was like, what are we doing? This is so dumb. And so I reached out to another therapist recently because I felt like it was going to be really helpful with some transitions that were going on in our lives. And, my kids were kind of ready to work through some stuff again. And so I thought, okay, let's get them back in. And I called around and I finally found someone. I got established. It can be really challenging to find someone to work with kids or to work with teens at times. There are a lot of people who focus on adults, which is fine. And it's also hard to find women counselors because my daughter did go to my counselor for a while who was a male and just didn't really feel like she could open up as much, which is totally understandable. I sometimes would feel that way too with a male therapist. So, we get her established. It's this woman, she has kids, like she seems like a really good fit. And my kids have both enjoyed talking to her and they've had a couple sessions each with her. And out of nowhere, this past weekend, when I'm out of town visiting my grandma who had a stroke. So like, I'm already stressed out, you know, and thank the Lord, he like worked a miracle and my grandma has no after effects from her stroke, but still like it's a stressful time. And what do I get? I get a text message from the person who owns the practice saying, hey, I'm really sorry, but your counselor is no longer working for us. So your kids won't be able to see her again. Here's some recommendations from Psychology Today for some other therapists. Now, hear me out. I have no clue why this lady left the practice. I don't know if she was fired. I don't know if she just randomly decided to leave. I have no clue. So that's frustrating. And I know there's privacy things, but we didn't even get for our kids to hear from her that she was leaving. It's just bam, she is gone. And we've texted with this counselor to set up appointments. Like, I got nothing from her saying, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm leaving the practice. I wish you guys well, blah, blah, blah. Now, the woman who owns the practice did reach out and she was very kind, and I have nothing against her for the way that she shared it, but it was like, this is the third time. We have barely gotten established with a therapist. My kids have started to open up and then bam, the rug is ripped out from underneath them. I am sick of it. And I don't even know. A lot of times I like to wrap up my videos in a neat little bow and say, oh, but here's some positive things and whatever, but I just can't do that here because now I have to start over and try to find another therapist. And the truth is it even worth it? Because at this point, I almost feel like I'm re-traumatizing my kids by putting them into therapy just to have the person leave suddenly out of nowhere. That is so triggering for the things that they've already been through. So I wish I could say, oh, like, here's how we can fix this problem. I don't know how to fix this problem, but honestly, we might be stepping back from therapy for a little bit because I can't keep putting my kids through this. It's really frustrating for them. It's sad for them because they start to feel attached to the therapist and then the therapist leaves out of nowhere. It reminds them of all these things they've already had to say goodbye to without warning. It's at the point where I'm like, is therapy actually helping or is it hurting? And right now it feels like it's hurting. So until I can find someone really consistent that I can trust, and I'm telling you, like, the next therapist I reach out to, I am telling them about all of these things that have happened, and I'm going to tell them, do not say yes to us if you are going to be leaving anytime soon. And if you do leave, I expect warning and I expect closure because I'm not letting my kids go through that anymore. Like, I feel a little bit mama bear coming out here, but it is getting so old. So if you are an adoptive or foster parent, I would love to know, have you dealt with this with therapists too? Like, am I crazy? Are we just having a horrible string of bad luck? Or is this something that's been happening to other people as well? I would love to know. Talk to me in the comments. If you enjoy these conversations about foster care and adoption, this one was obviously much more of a ranty session, which is not typically what I do. But if you're interested in those topics, pretty much all of my videos are about that. So I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'm getting really close to 8,000 subscribers, which is exciting. And I appreciate all of you so much who are subscribed and continue to support and comment on my channel. It means a ton to me. So yeah, let me know about the experience that you've had with therapists down below. I'd love to know if I'm crazy or not. I might be crazy, I don't know. And I sincerely hope you've had better experiences than we have because I would not wish this upon my worst enemy. I hope you're having a great day and I'm gonna go try to have a great day too. And I will see you next week.